Marc Marquez has amassed 92 MotoGP victories, trailing only Giacomo Agostini and Valentino Rossi. However, is looking only at wins enough to justify Marc as the most talented motorcyclist ever? To answer this question, we will delve into Marc's career by evaluating his performance across 5 key criteria: aptitude, toughness, headspace, longevity, and triumphs, scoring each on a scale from 0 to 10. Once we work through these, we can average out the scores to give Marc a total athlete score and place him on the Athleticus scoreboard. Alright, let the battle commence. First up, aptitude. One way to look at how adept a MotoGP rider is to see how many pole positions they have achieved. This is important, as pole position is the first place on the grid at the start of a race, and to get there, you need to have had the fastest lap time in the qualifying session prior to a race. So gaining this position implies that the rider has the technical capability to effectively go faster than anyone else on the track. Marc has a record-breaking 71 pole positions. This is the highest in MotoGP history. It's also the highest by quite a lot. Marc's ability to consistently secure top starting positions really demonstrate his exceptional riding and handling skills. Now, we already mentioned that he has the third most wins in MotoGP history, which is also a number that is still growing, but let's expand this further. What is his actual win rate in races? Here we can see that not only does Marc score pole positions, he also has one of the highest win rates in the sport. This is where things start to get tricky. It is actually very clear when looking at these high-level pole positions and win rate that Marc is clearly one of the most technically skilled drivers we have ever seen. I mean, you can't win this much without being really good. So we dug a bit deeper and looked at 4 key technical areas: braking mastery, cornering and lean angle, control throttle finesse, and adaptability across bikes. We scored a few riders across each of these elements out of 100 and got the following composite technical scores. I mean, it's very close. These are some of the closest numbers we have ever seen when comparing athletes, but it's fair to say that Marc is both technically capable and follows through with this by winning. Before scoring Marc here, we just wanted to expand on the adaptability across bike section, as it is quite interesting. A well-engineered bike makes a big difference in a rider's success rate. Given Marc has predominantly driven in what could be regarded as probably the best bike for most of his career, it begs the question of what his raw skill is if we remove any bike engineering advantages. So we did some analysis to come up with a bike advantage adjustment to provide a raw skill only win rate, and we got the following. Here we can see that Marc actually drops quite a bit, but keep in mind his win rate was already so high that even with the drop it still keeps him at an elite level. Also, there are a lot of assumptions here, and ultimately we can never know what the outcomes of something that never happened was, so we can't give this too much weighting, but it is interesting. Alright, so let's get a score for aptitude. Remember, there are heaps of other incredible stats and data crunch to get these scores, but I've saved you from the deep dive by sticking to the highlights. While there are technical elements where others just surpass Marc, ultimately it's hard to argue against him in any of these elements. He's one of the greatest combination of technical speed, daring braking, talented bike control, and ruthlessness that we've ever seen in the sport. So for aptitude, it's a 9.5. Next up, toughness. MotoGP races are physically intense. Being able to withstand G-forces across your whole body while controlling a bike at high speeds while wearing a hot and heavy suit will push anyone to their physical limit. We already know that Marc is physically capable, given his sheer amount of wins, so we won't elaborate much here on his direct physical fitness statistics. However, there are still a lot of other elements to look at here to determine toughness. We developed a composite score out of 100 for Marc and a few other riders looking at race completion rates, injury recovery time, post-injury performance, and final lap performance. Each of these are critical in assessing the physical resilience of a MotoGP rider. When we looked a bit deeper at each of these elements, we saw that Marc excels at recovery and post-injury performance, but falls down on race completion rates and fatigue performance. So what does this say? Essentially, Marc is resilient. He gets injured, but he keeps coming back stronger and better than before. However, in the moment, he does make mistakes and he does get tired. To be honest, this one is hard, because on one hand, part of being a tough athlete is the ability to avoid injury through training and rider awareness, but Marc has been injured quite a few times. But on the other hand, part of being a tough athlete is also about being resilient in trying to overcome injury as quick as possible and to get back in the game. Here, Marc absolutely excels beyond anything we have ever seen. So for toughness, overall, it's a solid 8.5. Alright, time to look into headspace. You can't ride a motorbike at these speeds without a level of confidence and focus that would transcend any normal human. We know from earlier that Marc holds the record for the most pole positions, but to truly test the rider's focus to deliver results comes from the ability to actually convert these pole position starts to wins. Here we can see that Marquez's conversion rate of 55% is one of the highest there is, showcasing his ability to maintain focus and deliver results consistently. Given the number of pole positions Marc has achieved, this already proved to us that he can drive fast, but in an actual race, can he still keep up the pace? We can look at his fastest laps here, and we can see that he actually has the third highest number of fastest laps in MotoGP history. This just highlights his relentless pursuit of speed and precision on the track, but the fact that he's climbing the record books here just shows how focused he is when it comes to controlling the bike. Another way to quantify his headspace is by examining his average lap time deviation during a race. This is a good measure of his focus because it shows us if he can keep up his performance for the duration of the race. Marquez's average lap time deviation of 0.2 seconds indicates a high level of consistency, matching the best in the field, which only further highlights that he is in the right headspace. It's hard to fault him here. Marc is very much in line with most of the other top drivers. However, while we did not talk about it here, we did bring it up in the toughness section, and it's Marc's injury rate. He is known for driving somewhat recklessly and with a lot of bravado, which in some cases has led to mistakes and injury. This implies that there are rare moments that Marc doesn't completely keep it together, especially when compared to other drivers. Other than that, it's hard to fault Marc here. He gets a 9 in this department. Next up, longevity. Marc Marquez's MotoGP career commenced in 2013, and as of the 2025 season, he has completed 13 seasons in the Premier class. This tenure already shows his enduring presence at the sport's pinnacle. The question is, though, how has he performed across all these seasons? So we can track his championship position every year since he started racing. Here we can see that Marc has demonstrated remarkable consistency. There was a dip since his injured years, but he seems to have shrugged that off and has caught up again very quickly. We can continue to break this down further and look at his average championship position throughout his career and compare it to others. Marc is an absolute machine that performs year on year, and every year he performs, he continues to push the records held by some of the past iconic riders. The main issue is that there are some riders here that have also had an incredible tenure in the sport, so Marc still has to prove himself against them in the long run. Overall, he scores a 9 here. Alright, let's go to the final category, triumphs. And we have talked about a lot of these already, so let's make it quick. To date, Marc has achieved 6 MotoGP championships, 92 Grand Prix wins, 71 pole positions, 156 podium finishes, youngest ever MotoGP champion, and most wins in a single MotoGP season. Now this list is just his major achievements, and under the surface, there are numerous other records that he holds. There are a few records here though that Marc hasn't really made a dent in where others have, such as the most consecutive wins and most consecutive pole finishes. But at this point, we are just nitpicking. All of these accomplishments solidify his status as one of the most decorated riders in MotoGP history. He is very clearly fluctuating in the top 3 of all major achievements, and he is still riding well, so really, he is on track to top these lists and even continue to surpass what has already been achieved. Overall here, it's a near perfect 9.5. Marc Marquez's legacy in MotoGP is undeniably incredible, and most importantly, it is still growing. So is he the most talented motorcyclist ever? I actually think that when looking purely at his technical capability, he genuinely is likely to be in the top 3, or at the very least within the top 5 best motorcyclists ever. There are some other elements where he falls down, but only ever so slightly, and there are still some record milestones that he could achieve, but he still has time. So with all scores considered, this gives Marc a total athlete score of 9.1, putting him here on the Athletica scoreboard. If you're a motorsport fan, you might also enjoy our assessment of Max Verstappen, which should pop up on the screen now. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to push the throttle on that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell notification so we can keep scoring athletes. I'm also interested to know your thoughts, so be sure to leave a comment as well. Anyways, thanks for watching team, catch you at the next one.